Hello, everybody, and welcome to What's the Story podcast. My name, Danny Murray.
And my name is Graham Merrigan.
Right, this is WTS 306, and the clocks have changed, Graham, so the grand stretch is official.
Yes, which is great news.
It is. I do when we're recording this now, it's after getting a bit dark. What is it? It's nearly 9 o'clock at night. So that's up, but we're only a couple of weeks away from it still being, broad daylight out there this hour. Great.
Absolutely. Joe, it's mad. Didn't the MEPs in Europe vote to abolish daylight savings?
Something going on with daylight savings, all right. Yeah, somebody somewhere doesn't want to do it anymore.
Exactly. But they haven't ratified it in Ireland for some reason. Professor Luke O'Neill was saying on the radio last week that the health benefits of abolishing it seems like a complete no-brainer.
Yeah, it wasn't a friend of the show, Professor Luke O'Neill. There was some other boffin that I heard, and they were saying that I obviously didn't know anything about in terms of health benefits and whatever. I just every year just now, right. An hour less sleep or an hour more sleep on that particular day or whatever it is. And even that doesn't make any difference to me. Anyway.
Doesn't make a difference to you because you're up at 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, 7 days a week.
Early bird catches the worm.
Absolutely.
But yeah, stuff like heart attacks, road accidents, all these things all spike.
Yeah.
Change. Bananas.
Mental, isn't it?
Yeah. Don't know.
When the clocks go back, it takes me a couple of days to sort myself out for some strange reason. When they go forward, I'm grand. I think I'm just in great form because walked the dog there at 7 o'clock and it was 7 o'clock and I'm still bright out.
Yeah, and that I find it makes a big difference. The longer, you finish work and you're not looking outside and going, oh jeez, that's the last of the brightness now. Better get out. It's you're grand. Feel like you've loads of time to do whatever you want for the evening. It's brilliant.
Absolutely.
I know the rural independence and all them mad jokes, they always bang on about it because, the classical
farming, is it?
Yeah. Well, cows don't tell the time, so it doesn't, it's a hindrance to them kind of thing. So,
yeah.
Which is fair enough, Graham. I'm not a farmer. I wouldn't have a breeze,
Tell you who is a farmer.
Oh, yeah?
Our guest this week. Great segue. This week, we are speaking to Paralympic archer, farmer and horse breeder, the lovely Kerrie Leonard. As I said, joining us now is Tokyo 22 Paralympian, the lovely Kerrie Leonard. Kerrie, thank you for joining us. Did I say anything wrong there?
So, I don't want to go out the gate. We're already start us off, but Tokyo 2020, and technically it was held in 21.
Yeah.
You said 22. This is not good. This is not good for me starting pedantically, is it?
Yeah,
did I say 2022?
You did, Graham. Yeah, come on.
Oh,
bit of
I watched it, I watched it in 21, not 2020. Oh, I can't believe it said 22.
The infamous now, all of our memories have to be cast back to the wonderful time that was COVID, and it was the pandemic Paralympics.
It was. When you started off by telling me you could edit some stuff out, I think maybe you want to cut that bit out and start again.
We'll start again. Give me 5 seconds.
No worries. Yeah, no, a bit mad. Obviously, the games that may or may not have been at one point, but thankfully they went ahead and I got to add Paralympian to my CV.
What is a PLY that you can add to the end of your name?
Yeah, so I have it at the end of my name. It's PLY. Tokyo was the first games that any Paralympian was allowed to actually use those letters. Up to that point, if you had competed at an Olympics, you could use OLY, but Tokyo was the first time you could actually use PLY.
Wow, that's because we've had Olympians on the show before, and I've never actually realised that I'm going to say privilege. I don't know if that's the right, but the same privilege hadn't been afforded to their Paralympic counterparts. Is there any particular reason why Tokyo 2021/2020 any particular reason why it was there and then that they decided to actually let, I don't even know if let that happen is the right frame to you, but like, just they finally got with the times kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know what was necessarily the reason why they let it happen in Tokyo, or why, I think more to the point, why it wasn't implemented beforehand. You know, when we talk about how London is the pinnacle of the Paralympic movement, and you have Rio directly after it, and you know, all of those, they can now apply retrospectively, of course, but all those people who competed from the first year of the Paralympics weren't able to have the same equality as Olympians. But honestly, I find quite often there is still a big discrepancy between the respect on both levels, isn't the right word, but on both institutions.
Yeah.
And would you, like, I have talked about Paralympians, obviously, I know quite a few, and over the years, it's kind of like 50-50 with them in terms of the general public calling them Olympians. And, you know, 50-50 in that 50% don't really mind it, but then the other 50% will actually correct. And now, I haven't been a Paralympian, but I think I would probably be in the 50% that would correct somebody that would call me an Olympian. Does that happen?
So, yeah, I know some people who take it very personally and have a big vendetta about it. I had my injury in 97, so I have grown up with a big change in the opinions and comfortableness or comfort levels of people who are interacting with somebody with a disability. We're getting very heavy here now. It's very early. So I personally, when I talk about I'm a Paralympian and I say to somebody, I often feel like I get the response like, aren't you great? Aren't you fantastic? Good for you. But if I said to somebody, I'm Olympian, you get it straight away. I don't need to make any other excuses or tell you anything else about my life. You go, oh my God, the amount of energy and effort that must go into that sport takes over the rest of your world. I don't feel it with Paralympics or Paralympian when I say I'm that. Now, so I don't tend to correct people because I also think you're trying and it's very hard for you to acclimatize to the new world that we live in. We're getting there, but I think it's a bit difficult. Now, from my side of things, it was really important for me to become a Paralympian. I've mentioned this before on another podcast, but it was really important for me to become a Paralympian because I was a para athlete for years, and people would introduce me into shows and go, this is Kerrie Leonard, Paralympian. And I'm in my head, there's alarm bells going off because I'm not a Paralympian. I'm a para athlete. Stop calling me a Paralympian because it's disrespectful to other people who are Paralympians and have put in the effort and energy to become that. So for me, I don't really correct people because it's hard for them to adjust to it. But I would feel very guilty being given the title of Paralympian until I became one.
Yeah,
I get that. I think calling you that before you become that, it can be seen as a bit patronizing as well, maybe. But yeah, sorry, Danny, I interrupted there.
No, I was going to say it's an interesting. It's kind of a not the same, but that whole stolen valor thing. Like you could easily feel kind of like, and as you said, like it's disrespectful to the people who have gone before and who have, qualified and done those kind of things. But we can kind of shift us in a little bit because you were saying, you were para-athlete. So, that then brings us to the kind of the process of qualifying for Tokyo. So Tokyo wasn't the first time you would try for previous Paralympic Games. Is that correct?
I tried for Rio. I worked in London. I ended up getting a job for the games, which was great. Got paid for that. It wasn't volunteer. It was even better. But I tried for Rio. the process is you have 3 qualifying competitions. At the end of that, if you've qualified, happy days. If you haven't, then you apply for what we call a bipartite application, which is a direct application to the International Paralympics Committee, and they determine whether you should be on the plane or not. For Rio, I didn't actually have too much ambition to go to Rio necessarily. I went to my first European Championships in 2014, and a lot of the rules had changed around conforming with the disability, the classification piece, which I wasn't aware because the difference between London and Rio was I had been governed by the Irish Wheelchair Association, and then a lot of sports decreed that their national governing bodies needed to take responsibility for para athletes.
Right.
So for Rio, I went under Archery Ireland's banner, and they didn't know how to manage that necessarily. They didn't know what the rules were. They didn't understand classification, etc. So I went to my first European Games in 2014, and it was shocking.
Really?
It was terrible. I didn't know any of the rules. I didn't know that I wasn't conforming to classification. I arrived in Switzerland. They told, like, the World Archery said, if you do not make these adjustments, you're not competing. So
you weren't even made aware of the adjustments?
No, but nobody knew at all. I didn't know. My governing body didn't know. That adjustment piece, not unique to archery. There are a lot of minor sports who are still in the same situation. So we made through.
It seems to be that happens at that kind of handover process, doesn't it? It's like not all the information, the comms go over. Because I believe it might have happened in table tennis around that time as well.
Yeah, I won't speak on anybody else. And
yeah.
And I'm glad
that, not you.
I'm glad this is an audio podcast and there's no video from this. So anyway, so essentially I went over. I basically learned all this through experience, what we need to do or not do. But I think I finished second last of the field. Like it was really, really bad. So the only reason and again, like I said, no ambition to go to Rio, but the only reason I went to my next competition was because I was so embarrassed, and I just said, I will not quit with that result. That's not happening.
Yeah.
That's my personality. So that was fine. And I went to my first World Championships in 2015, and I needed to finish 8th to qualify for Rio, and I finished 9th. And so it was the year I was graduating as well from college. I thought, okay, here's the point. I need to, it was 1 point or 1 place off qualifying. I need to put my energy into this year and qualify for Rio, just with the way the timings lined up. So then I went to the European Championships the following year in 2016, needed to finish first. I finished second, and then went to the final qualifying tournament. I needed to finish top 3, I think, and I finished 7th. So I was just outside of the qualifying standard. And there were a lot of things, again, that knowledge piece with the governing body that came with it, a lot of frustration. And I actually was going to probably quit after Rio. But again, I spent the summer thinking about whether or not I actually could live with myself if I looked back in 10, 20 years' time with the decision to quit. So I decided to stick with it, and then had to relive the trauma in September when Rio came on the TV, and then went for the Tokyo qualifiers. So we did the World Champs in 2019. Was all gung ho for the 2020 season. I had broken my leg in Christmas of 2019, but just with
Wow.
the timings, I was about 8 weeks out. I get out of the cast before the qualifier, the European qualifier, and then COVID hit. But everything was still going ahead. And 6 days before that European qualifier, they cancelled it because it was in Italy. So that was kind of what happened there.
Any good luck?
Not really, no. It's been a bit of a slog, to be honest with you. It's still a bit of a slog. Anyway.
You know, when you worked at the 2012 games,
Yeah.
were you an archer then anyway?
I sort of was. Like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I'd done archery as a kid. I had the equipment. My dad was given out to me a couple of years later because he was falling over the equipment and he was wondering what I'm going to do with it. So when I went to college, I just signed up for the archery club because a friend of mine needed extra bodies. Then I dropped out hard out of college, and was in a pretty bad spot, actually, like very bad spot mentally, to the point where I went, you better pick something to be around people, just have a conversation with somebody because you are dangerous the way you are. So I started going to archery twice a week. The coach at the time, we were still under IWA at this point. The coach at the time said, look, we have this opportunity. You can be, it's fully funded. Go to Stoke Mandeville in June of 2012. So I did it. I went, didn't really have any ambitions at all. Hadn't really been around people with disabilities. I know that sounds weird, but I grew up in the countryside, didn't see anybody.
Yeah, I didn't come across anyone with a disability till I was probably 26.
Okay.
That's like 14 years ago.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. So I know that
personally,
feeling.
I personally was freaked out when I arrived in Stoke Mandeville and there was 50 people in wheelchairs. I'd never seen as many people in my life.
Especially Stoke Mandeville.
Yeah. Didn't really know what to expect at all, but that's really it. It wasn't an archer or had ambitions to be an archer before that. Just went to Stoke Mandeville, realized actually I could do this. And then, but again, didn't have ambitions to go to a games. I was working at one, but I didn't really have too many ambitions. It was mostly a joke among everybody in the office. Like, wouldn't it be hilarious if you're working in London and then in a couple of years' time, you'll be on the other side of the fence type of thing. So that's kind of the connection. I didn't really have ambitions when I was in London, but
so it helped your head as well, though.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was a whole thing. I knew I needed to be around people. I couldn't be left on my own in the headspace I was.
That's a great a double I was gonna say double-edged sword. Is that a bit of a pun with archery? No, it's not. Sorry I went there.
Maybe fencing, Graham. Fencing is probably the sport you're looking for.
I'll give up. Danny's the comedian, not me.
Some sort of target-related pun you could probably there. Not double-edged sword or that, you know?
No, but for to be kind of a bit down in the dumps, join a sport, not get to the 2016 games, but then get to the 2020 games. Oh my God, sorry about that.
I'll jump in for you, mate. I think what you're trying to get at is that there's a lovely kind of story arc to, Kerrie, you sort of looking to use archery or just connecting with people through archery to take you out of what was a very dark place, as you said, and how that's ultimately led you to what is the pinnacle of amateur sports in, going to a Paralympic Games. That's an incredible story. And I think, I don't know, do you look back at all and kind of say that is quite the story arc of being on?
Absolutely. I mean, my uh, one of my favorite things is that Chaplin quote of "Life's a tragedy in close up, but it's a comedy in long shot." Um, and if I take the time to look back, I definitely appreciate the journey, and I'm very proud of myself for it. Now, if you say to me, if you introduce me and try to give me any kind of accolade whatsoever, I make self-deprecating jokes. I try to shut it down because that's not me. But in moments of quiet reflection, I definitely appreciate the journey. And I also, not that I did it on my own, but I had a lot of adversity that I had to overcome to get here.
And on that, and just because you mentioned the fact that like you grew up in the country, you didn't really see people who, like who were sort of similar to yourself or were in wheelchairs or whatever. Like it just, that's rural life in Ireland. You kind of, you see your small community, and it's only when you get to the big smoke or whatever, you might see something else. But even then, you mightn't see anyone with disabilities, So for you growing up then, like, I'm kind of reminded of that phrase, can't see, can't be anything. And we hear about that a lot, particularly with women's sports and kind of how that's evolved over the last, well, obviously for you, like, were the Paralympics even something that you kind of had any reference point for at all up until you'd started to get involved with archery?
No, is the quick answer. I think if you look at, not to single out swimming or athletics or something like that, but I think they've got systems in place. So they identify talent early, they get them in, and you're in, a trajectory to get to a games. Me, not so much. My family's into horses. Like I was brought to horse riding competitions every single weekend. And I decided very early that I did not enjoy horse riding. So it was never going to happen. And again, no ambitions to even attempt a Paralympics until I was brought to Stoke Mandeville because, by the way, we've got extra funding. We're booking everything for you. All you have to do is say yes. And that's it. I mean, again, well, I'm going to steal Graham's phrase there, double-edged sword. But what I grew up doing was being surrounded by really strong, determined people in my family with big ambitions. So I went to the local primary school. I went to a mainstream secondary school. There was no questions about what box I was going to be put into because what I saw around me were my aunts who were heading up, countrywide divisions in their companies, all those things. I'd be at Christmas dinner and I'd have those ambitions for myself. So for me, when I talk about the ambitions for myself, it's always been to excel and not have my wheelchair hold me back in settings that typically I wouldn't be seen in. But that was my ambition growing up. I had no concept of sport that would necessarily fit me because I wasn't around it.
Yeah, yeah. And so, like, with that sort of professional ambition, for want of it, that career ambition, maybe, how then was that something that you had to wrestle with them when you said you dropped out of college because of the mental health issue? If you don't mind me asking, was that a kind of hard thing to balance then in terms of, where that, like, what do I do with this ambition now? I've had this and I've had these influences in my life, and now I'm kind of potentially putting a big blocker in my way by potentially dropping out of college.
Yeah, I've grappled with that a bit. I would say I had a rough time in secondary school. I wanted to go and do a course in college that was not very academic, that I could excel in, that was more hands-on. I happened to pick one that from the outside looked very hands-on and happened to be very theoretical. So I dropped out because I couldn't keep up because I was mentally and physically exhausted from secondary school, and then also college is not living up to my expectations.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, that was probably that Christmas. Then I decided to drop out, and I've always been quite honest with myself. People said to me, "We'll get you back in. Don't drop out. We'll talk to people. We'll get back into the course. We'll make it happen." And I just went, "No, I can't do it. I have to figure out what my path is, because if I stay there, I'm not going to, we're going to be having this conversation in 8 months' time again. That's just not going to work. So I need to figure out what my next step is. I don't know what it is." My aunt stepped in at the time. She said, "Look, the Olympics, I think, are looking for people," because friends of hers had gone over. We looked it up. The closing date was in 2 days or something. And also, fantastically, London had an employment policy that if you had a disability, you were offered the first round interview. You had to get out of the first round. But if you had a disability, you were streamlined to the front of that queue. You could have the interview. So again, my confidence was fairly in the drain at that point, but I did London. I had this amazing experience, and I came back with so much confidence that it saw me out for 6 months. So I could think of all the things I wanted to do and pursue because I had confidence behind me.
I'm fascinated by it, and I'm joining dots that potentially aren't here. So do feel free to tell me I'm absolutely waffling, because that more often than not is what I am doing. But something like that strikes me potentially as kind of a lesson in mental resilience. And then if I try to clunkily bring that back to your discipline in the Paralympics with archery, I'd imagine it's not something that just requires a huge amount of focus, but also that mental resilience, because if you're chasing a target, you're slightly off, you slightly deviate, whatever it might be, and then you're like, shit, pressure on for the next arrow. Like that mental resilience, that being able to kind of just compartmentalize and bring those things, is that me waffling now, or did that kind of help in terms of the discipline then as well, that like those lessons give you a little bit of an edge?
I think I compartmentalize a lot. So I had my injury when I was 6. I grew up on a farm. My parents, how do I go into this? My dad could only see me at night because he had to work on the farm. He didn't have the choice to dwell on my disability, because if he did, everything else just falls apart. And if you have livestock, where there's livestock, there's dead stock. If you're not figuring out how to handle livestock, it starts affecting other issues. So in crunch moments like that, you have to grit in. You have to compartmentalize, or else everything around you just falls apart. And I think I've experienced a lot of those moments over the years. Now, I like who I am with that side of my personality, but there are other moments that I reflect thinking, actually, it makes me cold, and I find it very hard to be open with people and honest with people, because I can't let everything go in those moments. I have to focus on the next step, because if I don't focus and compartmentalize, then everything else starts to snowball. So great for sport. I love who it's made me as a person and what I've achieved, but I also think about the bits that it's to kind of rob me of a little bit.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. Like, and but it makes total sense. Yeah, exactly what you mean in terms of like it's that kind of it's checks and balances, right? But yeah.
And in terms of competition, then, like, because I did powerlifting for a while there, and I would have to go. I'd have to do able-bodied competitions, or I would go abroad. I actually went to Stoke Mandeville as well. Would that be the same for archery in Ireland? Is that you would be joining up with the able-bodied kind of tournaments to get practice in, I suppose?
Yeah, unfortunately. Now I thought I'd hoped Tokyo would help with that. As I commented in Tokyo, I wanted my visibility to bring more people into the sport. Unfortunately, I am the only, forget gender, I am the only person with a disability in this country who is shooting right now.
Wow.
In any way, shape, or form.
That's mad, isn't it? As you said, usually after Paralympic Games, there is a bump in our kind of community with new people doing new sports. So I wonder if that was just because of COVID, maybe, and there wasn't as much eyes as there would have been maybe on the telly. Would you say?
I think so, but also I think, you find people get poached. It's easier to give somebody a paddle and send them off and do table tennis. It's easier to get somebody in a pool and get them to swim. And then
their basketball lads are poaching everybody. Black Bulls are just literally lifting lads off the street. Sort of heard.
Right at the airport.
You need to tell me how to get people into archery. You need to tell me how to get people into archery.
We wait at the airports after these tournaments and just sign them up.
That's a good question, because we're in an Olympic and Paralympic year, so there will be eyes on all those sports. But if there are people that wanted to, what is the process for people who want? Is it literally find an archery club and get involved? Is that how simple it is?
Yeah, it should be the most accessible sport in the country, honestly. The website couldn't be easier. It's archery.ie. And I send people that direction all the time. I have a concern that clubs, without insulting people, but that clubs aren't welcoming to people with disabilities. That is my big concern. So from my perspective, I go teach the kids in the NRH sometimes, and the nurses or not even the nurses, some of the physio staff may say to me, listen, these are all the things that you need to be conscious of with this child. They don't absorb a lot of information. They need to be constantly holding this item in their hands. I don't think they can do it. It's fine. Leave it to me. It's fine. And I just need you to shoot some arrows down a hall. Once you do that and I assess the situation, we can work from there. There's nothing that you need. For me, I did a beginner's course with a type of bow that's used in the Olympics, but not in the Paralympics. Every arrow went left, right, center, up, down, because I'm quite short, and so the string kept hitting the wheelchair and being interfered with. The only difference between me and somebody else is I recognized, okay, if I like the taste of this sport, we can figure it out afterwards. And that's all it is. If you have a disability or something, or even if you have certain injuries and you're limited in certain ways, you evolve, you develop your own style, you figure it out. There's no extra equipment or special equipment you need. Everything is available at clubs for beginners courses. It should all be there. So my concern is there are people who are so absorbed and freaked out by how do we make these people feel comfortable? How do I coach these people? How do I do this and this and this and this and this? That before you even set foot into a club, there are barriers that don't exist that have been built.
And I know that there was a handover with IDLA Sport and Archery Ireland, but are IDLA Sport still, would they be still signposting new members to Archery Ireland?
I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you whether that is the case or
Yeah.
not. And I'm not going to speculate on
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No,
They
it
have their
just
own
seems
sports
just
that they
because
govern.
it just seems mad that you're still the only person competing in it. I just find that mad. I find that, yeah, crazy because I remember way back when I joined sport, Mark Barry was the development officer at IWA. I don't think they have development officers anymore. I could be wrong on that, but I'm not sure. But I remember being given a page and it was literally pick your sports.
Hmm.
Now I picked sports that I was familiar with, maybe, I picked team sports. I did try track racing, but my point being is that I was given a list of sports and then I was signposted to each. Do you know that type of way?
Yeah.
So you're kind of just hoping that that still does happen. Hopefully it does. Look, neither of us know if that happens or not, but um, I would like to think that in a Paralympic Olympic year that there might be a bit of a bump after the games because I know don't Paralympics Ireland do like a almost like a convention type thing with all sports and demonstrations. I remember going to one of them and being very, very impressed
Hmm.
and signing up to a few sports after attending it. So hopefully by the end of the games, you'll get a bit of a bump. But it is Paralympic year. Where are we with Paris?
Where are we? So I've been to the three qualifiers that has taken place. Unfortunately, didn't qualify, so we're still on the hunt for the spot. So we will be applying for it, and hopefully, the IPC sees the merit in that. I would say I was knocked out by people who qualified for the games already.
Okay.
So in terms of being knocked out by and just kind of have lots of regrets, but in terms of being able to walk away at this stage and say that you were beaten by people who ultimately got the spot, that's where I'm at. I'm just waiting to see if we can show the merit in sending me to Paris. I have one
Okay.
more competition to go, and I'm hoping that that is the case there.
And
Okay.
what's the like? How what's the time frame, I suppose, in terms of when you ultimately get that kind of decision?
Um, the last time we found out in June, so that's what I'm expecting to happen again this year. So I'll either be there or I'll be at home cheering on everybody else that's there and trying to raise the profile of my own sport and para game or para sports in general.
Is there many classifications in archery?
There is not. There is two.
There's two.
So you have open, which I'm in, and you have W1. So open used to be divided into W2 and standing. So W1, for those of you who don't know, W1 is athletes who have three limbs affected, at least three limbs affected. Um, so you have people like quads, for instance, quadriplegics, who would be in that category. And then there are some disabilities like MS, for instance, depending the severity of that will determine what category they're in. But the open category, I compete in it, and then also archers with no arms who shoot with their feet compete in it as well because they've got technically only got two limbs affected. So they're also
They
in
actually
that.
shoot with their feet.
Yeah.
I've never
Did
seen that.
you,
Oh my God.
Yeah,
did
I
you
saw.
not see Rising Phoenix
No, I
on
don't think
Netflix?
so.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No.
There you go. There's on one for your watch list now.
I have heard of Rise and Phoenix. I can't believe I still haven't watched it, but yeah, you've just reminded me. That is mental. Yeah, that's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's impressive, is what it is.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
I've never archery is one of the individual sports I haven't tried. Sorry.
If you want, I'm a coach. I'll teach you.
Never too
Yeah,
late, Arrow.
yeah.
We should
Never
get
too late.
We should get a WTS day offsite. I'll teach you guys.
That'll teach both of us. We go for an archery session.
Yeah, I mean, I am proper wonky eyed, so I'll be. I mean,
Oh, Danny only has vision in one eye. Would Danny get classified?
We'll put him in. You would need to be in the visually impaired category, so you would.
Yeah, and even
then, they're not Paralympics. They only go up to World Championship level.
No, see, yeah, no, but I'd absolutely, anything that involves any kind of hand-eye coordination, I am less than useless. Like, like I mean, I like putting cups into the cupboard, and I'm fucking breaking cups, and it's just like I'm terrible. So archery, I would be afraid to take my own good eye out. Never mind somebody else's.
I know, you'd be fine. You haven't had me as a coach. You'll be fine. I'll teach you.
Yeah, I like there that instantly.
There we go.
There is a confidence. But Merrill was absolutely like, why can't we? Like, what's the next Olympics? LA or something? Is it? I don't know.
LA's coming next. Yep.
LA, yeah. Merrill, have you been to LA?
Yeah, Kerrie will get me to LA.
There we go.
If we start this year, I will get you both to LA.
I don't know what I'll be doing there, but Merrill, I'll be in the Paralympics.
Life coach.
I'll be taking a tour of the Hollywood Hills or something, you know?
Yeah. In regards to Tokyo, like, did you, although it was hit by COVID, like, you did enjoy the experience, yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was weird. Very, very strange, I would say, especially since, you know, it's a country on my bucket list, and yet I feel like I can't actually cross it off the bucket list because it didn't go anywhere. So
you weren't allowed other than play sport.
No, so we arrived a week early for acclimatization and basically imprisoned in the hotel for a week. There were people, we each had individual rooms. There was somebody sitting on each floor. And if you kind of put your head out, they would wonder why you were leaving your room, unless it was for specific times. And then we went to the village then after a week, and that was a bit more relaxed, but you had to wear masks everywhere. And you were only allowed to go to your own sport. You weren't allowed to go anywhere else. Australia, for instance, they had their own building. They weren't allowed to leave it at all. So they didn't go to the food hall or anything like that. They had chefs in one building just feeding the Australians.
And was that just because the sheer number of Aussie athletes?
Yeah, that, and also they did 2 weeks quarantine before they came out. They were doing 2 weeks quarantine when they got home. You know, they couldn't risk bringing the virus back to the country. So that was a bit strange. But the nicest thing, so they did all the stadiums built, the seating and everything was installed, and they were empty. So there was nobody there. I had never been to games before. So I did my qualifying day. We had a break the next day, and then I had my matches. So on my break, I went to the stadium to understand what the experience would be like when I was shooting my matches. So it was for the men's. And I realized that, you know, no one was getting cheered for because the place was empty. So I ended up staying and cheering for all of the smaller teams on the day of my day off. So some of the larger teams, their teammates were in the stands screaming for them, but then not the sports, but the teams that had one athlete, it was silence. So I just started screaming for South Africa, Chile, like all these small, tiny nations. Which was fine. And then the next day I went to do my matches, and all of the people I cheered for the day before were cheering for me. So the stand was full for me, which I was just kind of like, okay, that's sweet. That's
that is very sweet. Yeah.
That's
yeah. That's lovely. I'd got very emotional there.
Mm-hmm. It was really nice. That's the nicest part, looking back on the whole experience.
Yeah, and that's it, because like that whole time frame for everyone obviously was such a just weird, mad time. Like, so having those little moments of that do show kind of like the better side of people, because that was a bad time where we saw it, and even now we're still kind of dealing with some of the weirdo stuff that's coming out of it. But that kind of stuff is like genuinely endearing and genuinely nice, and you were the catalyst for it, which is even better again. So yeah,
it was. Yeah, I definitely remember that back thinking, I don't know if that would have taken place if I hadn't been there cheering for my other teammates. Because archery is a weird sport. Like, the larger teams are very cliquey and don't really interact with you unless you engage with them firstly. But the thing about archery is you're not trying to beat the guy next door, because you can't. You can only beat yourself. So you have to shoot. You have to score the best score you can. And only you can ruin your chances. So if you think about the guy next door, that feeling snowballs and you actually end up ruining your own opportunity. Or you gain so much confidence every shot that the person next door pays attention to you, and it actually undoes their confidence. So I've never really, I shouldn't probably say this. I'm sure people thinking about team management are freaking out. But I personally don't take losses or wins personally, because it was either my fault or I was responsible for the win. And I have a very different perspective on things than I think other people do when it comes to archery.
That's really good, though, sports psychology wise, I think. And I think that's really good, because you're just concentrating on yourself. Like you said, you'll take responsibility if you win or lose. That I've never heard anyone kind of use that kind of analogy in terms of sport. It's always like, you always see sports stars being a bit psychotic with their hungriness for competition and all, that's a really good analogy, I think.
It's that kind of control the controllables. You can't control the people in the pen next door. You can't, you know what I mean? But yourself, okay, I can do my best to control the elements that are, within me. But
it's brilliant.
It's
Kerrie.
We'll just start the TED Talk now, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
We're putting this forward for TED Talk.
You'll have to start charging us, Dean, as we start to take notes and apply them to our company.
Kerrie, have you ever tried any team sports?
I done a bit of the basketball, so I have, Graham. In the day.
Kerrie, be careful. He'll have you up here with the balls, and you'll be,
Signed.
I know. That's really all the team stuff I've done, I think, because I loved running the length and breadth of the court. I liked the passing element, but you have to I need time to shoot the hoop, and there's people interfering or expecting me to actually score, and I don't like the stress of letting other people down. So I'm like, I'll run. I'll do suicides all day long. Keep going. Yeah. It's fine. Love the cardio, but I couldn't do the pressure of letting other people down.
Yeah, I don't think your analogy with the archery would work in basketball.
Probably not.
No. Listen, Kerrie,
make a table quiz. That's my other.
Yeah.
Now we are talking. Yeah.
Now we are talking.
Yeah, I've done an arts degree. I'm only good for a table quiz. After that, I'm no use to anyone. So yeah.
You're doing a bit of farming now as well, aren't you? Where did I see on Insta story the other day trying to sell hay?
So, funnily enough, I actually have the green cert, which you probably don't know what that is. No. But I am a qualified farmer. I decided.
Unreal.
Back in the day, they were offering this professional farming course, which was if you were in full-time employment, but at some point you have a family farm to take over. Once a month, you go and do this course, and at the end of it, you have a degree. So, or not a degree, but a cert. So I did that. So I have that. I breed thoroughbred horses. as a side hustle.
Third
Um,
hustle.
a side hustle,
You
and
breed thoroughbred horses. Oh
yeah,
my god.
and I'm trying to get my father's hay sold. That was the other thing. And I'm also, if you looked at the Instagram stories today, my brother's looking for he's trying to get work as a landscaper, handyman. So I was promoting that as well. So I kind of have my toes in different things.
Brilliant. Geez, the breeding of the thoroughbred horses, that I'd say that's amazing, is it?
Yeah, it is. I again, 2020 was a stressful year because my horse that I was breeding decided to die in February of
Oh no.
2020, March 2020. That was great too, but it has, yeah, you have this experience of like the horses can only have one animal a year. So if stuff doesn't go right, you've put all of your energy into that. But again, growing up on a farm, you know that things don't always go right, so you have to cope with that. And then you're sort of trying to predict what works for the horse and then what the market wants. It's very kind of like playing the stocks with living animals. So it's
That's
really
mental, isn't it?
fascinating. Yeah,
Cool, yeah. Jesus.
yeah,
So,
it's something I really enjoy doing.
yeah.
Brilliant.
Horses, hay, handymen, archery. The worst pun of the night, but there are many strings to your bow, Kerry. Many strings.
You.
Did I hit the target, Graham?
You that hit the target. You're the
I'm gonna
comedian, not me.
I'm gonna flatter you and say that's the first time I've ever heard that joke.
There we go. I'll take that. I'll take that.
Kerry, it's been brilliant
No
chatting to us.
sarcasm detected there.
I've really enjoyed the conversation and I'm very appreciative of your time. And I will be crossing everything for qualification for Paris.
Absolutely.
And we'll give you full support there. So listen, thanks so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you for having me. You'll have to come back and do some archery, firstly, and
I'd
then
love it.
or we'll do a kind of we'll do a rundown of Paris after the fact.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Love that.
we'll hold you to that one. Absolutely, Kerry. Yeah.
Yep.
And as Mero said, fingers, toes, everything crossed. And hopefully we'll be talking to you after the games, after very successful games.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks so much, Kerry. And enjoy Paris.
Mm-hmm. We
Oui.
Absolutely fascinating chat.
I really, really liked the analogy of, you'll find in individual sports an elite level, such as Paralympic level and Olympic level and golf and whatever. I always find that a lot of them are a bit mad, like in their
Oh,
in their ways of trying to win and stuff like that. But Kerry's analogy there of, if she wins or if she loses, ultimately it's her responsibility in that the sport that she's in. I found that really fascinating. Like,
yeah.
in a sports psychology sense, I found that really good.
I think that's it. And I have heard other like really, really, really elite athletes talking about that. At times, you just have to narrow it down to you're in a competition against yourself.
Yeah.
Like I remember, like, and you're talking about those like those freak athletes, those like once in a generation athletes who, and I remember hearing Tiger Woods talking about that. You know what I mean? Talking about like walking down the 18th fairway, and yeah, he's got like three other golfers who are in contention or whatever it might be. And you've got a crowd of thousands of people around that last green, but ultimately it's only him that can put that ball. It's only him that can sink the ball in the hole, kind of thing.
And I was thinking of Tiger Woods in that.
Yeah,
that was the one I was thinking of.
It is that kind of mindset and that kind. So it's fascinating to hear Kerry like with a very similar view in terms of how she balances those things. But absolutely, like we've said it before, like we've had, we had Johnny Fulham on the podcast many moons ago talking about Paralympics, and then we've had Olympians on. We had Saskia Tidy on. We had Wayne McCullough on. We've talked to people who have competed at these very, very, very high level and elite level sports. And I'm just always fascinated by the sort of the mental switches that have to be flicked to get yourself prepared and get yourself into, and it's just fascinating.
It's huge discipline for individual sports. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when you're in team sports, you have your teammates to get you out of a hole or something like that. You know what I mean? Whereas an individual, it's just all you.
And the fact that Kerrie, like she pointed out, that she is one of one, unique. She's a unicorn in the World Paralympics Ireland in terms of the only shooter out there, which is it's quite.
That's a bit mad as well for me. Like I think more possibly could have been done in terms of, I don't know, signposts by either sport, but I don't know that for sure. But it doesn't really make sense to me because after every Paralympic Games, there is bumps in inquiries, even, you know.
But it's all the more in terms of the respect and the testament to Kerrie that, given she is one of one.
Absolutely. 100%.
She blazed that trail. That is genuinely like
absolutely trailblazer. Absolutely, I agree with you. So, and a lovely, lovely person to be. And anyone that would be listening would like. It'd be brilliant to be coached by someone with that passion for it as well.
Yeah, and that experience and that knowledge and that skill level and everything else. So yeah, hopefully somebody somewhere out there is either listening or they know somebody who know, you know, and just little, sometimes, man, it's just those little seeds that drop somewhere and appoint somebody, you know.
Big time.
But
well said.
Brilliant chat, loved it, and wish Kerrie nothing but the best with all of that crack, and hopefully we talk to her again later this year off the back of a very triumphant and very successful Paris campaign. Well, we put a fork in it. Is it done?
It's done. It's done. You can go to WTS pod. You can go to WTSpod.com to listen to any.
It reminded me of it. Sorry, do you remember Phone Jacker?
Oh, yeah. Remember Brian Bedanton? Brian Bedanton, my God, what a character. Brian Bedanton. I want this painting. Oh, brilliant. Phone Jacker was class. Was that Don Jolly? No, it wasn't.
No, don't think
no, it wasn't. I'm gonna actually go on YouTube a bit of Brian Bedanton because it makes me very giddy. As I was saying, WTSpod.com for any previous podcast you want to listen to. You can also search WTS Pod on any podcast provider. Podcast Republic, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you get a podcast, just search WTS Pod. We're on Twitter at WTS Pod. He's at Danjo Murray. I'm at Merrigan Mania. And we will talk to you guys again. Danny, clear eyes.
Full hearts.
Can't lose.
Sweet.